Hi, this video shows you how to get started with an inner critic pattern, and I'm going to demonstrate it using the inner critic pattern, but of course you may have chosen one of the other five, such as the taskmaster, the perfectionist, and so on, but it'll be pretty similar to this. So once you have chosen your pattern and enrolled for it, and then you will go to this page. In this case, it's the description of the inner critic pattern. You can see here's a little description of it. It tells you that it's transformed by the self-esteem capacity. And then you also have the option, if you decide you don't want to do this right now, you can click here and it'll put it on a to explore list to remind you to do it in the future. But we're going to assume at this point that you're doing it now. So you'll click here. And this brings you now to the intro stage. And you can see at the top here, there are the five main stages, and then there's the intro stage at the beginning and the conclusion stage at the end. And since we're in the intro stage, because this is white here, and you can see that there are 5 steps or pages to this stage, which are listed over here. And we're on the first page here. So it starts out with a description of the inner critic pattern and a short description of the false belief that goes with the inner critic pattern. And then once you've read that over, you click Next. And by the way, I should say that this intro stage is really just designed to give you some basic information about the pattern, in this case, the inner critic pattern, to get you started exploring it, but mostly so you can decide whether you actually have it strongly enough that you want to work on it. Now, in your case, in this course, you may have already decided that, but it's still worth going through this intro stage. So when you get to the second page, which is the stories page, see the first page is a description page, second page is a stories page, you can click here to read a story about someone who had the inner critic pattern. This is a short story, but it will actually be continued later on, you'll see. So this just gives you a little flavor for what the pattern is like. So I'm going to close this, which will take us back to this. And if you'd like to do a little journaling about your own inner critic story, you can enter it here. And it will end up in your inner critic report along with everything else that you put in. Okay, we'll click Next. And by the way, instead of clicking Next, I could have just clicked over here. So for instance, if I wanted to go back to the storage page, I just click here and it goes back there. And if I want to go to the next page, in addition to clicking Next, the other option is I can just click here. So now this page has a list of patterns that are similar to whatever pattern you've chosen to work on. In the case of the inner critic pattern, this basically gives you the option that if you decide at this point, after looking over these similar patterns, that one of these would actually be better to work on than the one you chose, in this case, the inner critic pattern, you can switch and work on one of those. Now, in this case, the similar patterns are actually the 5 of the 7 types of inner critics. So the taskmaster, the perfectionist, the underminer, the food controller, and the destroyer. So you can actually click on any one of these to learn more about that pattern. And then you can either click over and decide, hey, I want to work on that, or you can close this and it'll take you back here. So assuming that you've probably already made this choice, I'm just going to assume, for the sake of this demonstration, that you have decided to continue with the inner critic pattern. So therefore, we will click Next, which takes us to the 4th page here. And now this is a page where you can explore what triggers your inner critic pattern. In other words, what situations in your life tend to cause your inner critic to attack you. So, and you can check off whichever of these feel right. Someone asked me to do something I've messed up in the past. I'm eating and drinking. I'm doing homework, whatever it might be. And just to show you, if there's something that you would, a situation that tends to trigger your inner critic that's not on this list, you click here and you can type in, I'm just going to say new situation. And you see that adds it to the list. And then everything that you've checked off or added to this list ends up in your inner critic report as well. Then there might be types of people that trigger you attacking yourself. So if you're around judgmental people or argumentative people, maybe that triggers you. Or maybe you get triggered around women or whatever. So you can check off whichever of those are appropriate or add your own. Or there might be specific people, like your friend Delia. Maybe when you're around her, you tend to judge yourself. So you can type that in and then click next. And then finally, you get to the last page and you're basically asking, do you have the inner critic pattern strongly enough that you would like to work on it? If not, you can click here, go back and choose another pattern. But assuming that you do, we'll click here and we'll go to we'll go to stage 1, which will be described in a different video.